Hi, David Odell here with Odell Complete Concrete. First day on the job. Actually, I did another job here previously in another video, and the first three people that can mention that title of the previous job that we did here will get a utility knife and work gloves mailed to you by me. But anyway, we're going to be doing this whole front yard. The driveway's coming out, the garage floor's coming out. But in this particular part, we're going to focus on the garage floor. All this concrete work here is about 80 years old, I would say, right around that neighborhood. You can see that the garage floor is really taking a beating here. It's it's held up well for the last 80 years. So, you would assume, it's pretty decent concrete being in there that long and holding, still usable. That sink was heavy, very heavy, cast iron. So behind there, because it's a drive-through garage, they added another garage, a bigger one behind it. That's why that back wall's knocked out, and the floor wasn't level with it. They just kind of did a ramp down. They knocked out the stem wall and just ramped over it to get into that raised garage in the back. But what I found out real quickly is that this garage floor, which is, happens, look how thin this concrete was. Pretty amazingly thin. I mean, it's 1.5 inches at best. See, my finger's about as thick as the concrete was. But you know what that told me right away? It told me, wow, this stuff has been here 80 years and it's doing okay. This soil must be excellent for putting concrete on. So right away I knew, well, this is good soil, so I'm not going to have to do a lot with it. I don't have to worry about cracking or any kind of settlement. But this garage floor, what I was trying to say is that this garage floor was poured, it was a monolithic with the stem wall. So it was either saw cut all the way around it and try to break it out, and then you'd still have that weird looking new meets the old stuff. So what I did was I pre-drilled all the way around the perimeter just to check the depth and how far that footing came in before I went ahead and saw cut it, because I didn't think saw cutting would be that beneficial if that footing protruded into the floor a lot, and footings go fairly deep, at least a foot. So instead of disturbing the footing, I decided to just raise the whole floor level on this thing and go over that existing footing and leave that undisturbed. So I'm not going to crack the footing and mess with the stem wall. It was just one of those, on the job call things you got to do sometimes. Make quick decisions and hope for the best. I did do a little cut. I didn't go full depth. It was just giving me a little relief point to chip away at without disturbing that footing too much. But inevitably what's going to happen is we're just going to pour over that rather than try to meet that elevation and then have the new meet the old and an eyesore basically. We're just going to go over it, and what we'll do to compensate for the new height, it actually works good for the back garage floor because we're coming up to meet that, so that eliminates that ramp down. And then as we get to the front to make up for that difference, because we've raised it up, we'll do a little recess behind the garage door, a drop down. That way we'll make up for that difference going over the top, and when the garage door comes down you won't see it, plus the water can't get into the garage because you have a little inch step there. That's the plan on this. And because it's not that thin going over the top of the concrete there, it's not that thick going over the top of that existing footing, it's a crack point along that saw cut that I did. So what I do typically to avoid cracks on a straight line where you get a thinner piece of concrete is you ramp the dirt down so you don't have that abrupt drop off. You just make a smooth transition is what you have to do. That way she won't crack there. That's the last thing you want to do. Anyway, so right here we got this little, I just trimmed this. This is the actual height of the step down going into the garage. It'll be a little less than that when we strip it and face it, because we're going to pour out underneath that to the front of the garage. The door sets in front of that step down. And we're using the Owens Corning fiberglass reinforcement, about 18-inch centers. Also, I'll throw some fiber mesh into the load when it arrives. That's the homeowner over there that you see, Bob, the pilot, which he flew my banner along the beach for a few weeks. Now here's Poor Day. I would have liked to pick it up and eliminated that step entirely, but we had the side yard at a lower level and we had to get water drainage from there, so we had to get it back down to the original level at some point. Then we just dialed in a little bit to meet that new addition garage over there, and we're pouring over the existing footing here as well. And you notice how we've got a good 2 inches over the top of that concrete, but I ramped the dirt up to the old footing. So we're using Associated Ready Mix. We're going to use a pea gravel mix. And this is a 3000 psi. I also added 1% Polar Set in here to make it kick off a little bit, because we're in the shade and it is a little colder than usual. So I poured about halfway out, and then I just went ahead and bowl floated it with a wood. This is a 3-foot wood bowl float. So got half of it laid down and bowl floated. Then we'll proceed and lay the last half down. And this went in pretty thick too, because we raised the elevation up and then we compacted, so all those things made it thicker than the average. So we're about 5 inches thick. That little corner pop out's a water heater. We didn't want to disturb that. Actually, that 2x4 got buried a little bit there because we didn't have good slope. So when we strip it, we'll have to fill in that void a little. In other words, that rip was a little bit too thick. Now there's the magnesium 4-foot bowl float going on. And this went off really nicely. I was really surprised, because a lot of times I've added some accelerators or added some other additives, and sometimes you don't notice a difference. But with this particular company, this particular concrete company, it was actually in the concrete and you could tell. That's Tyler out there in the sliders, my son, and there's Carlos. He's out there as well. Now we just stripped that off. We had to push the mud into that trough that little form created. And you know, these older houses, this is actually in Long Beach. You know, when you get into the older areas, the way they used to set these lots up, basically level. The garage is detached. They're set about level with the sidewalk, which is about 60 to 70 feet away, which didn't make a lot of sense, but that's how they all were done. So water drainage is a major issue. I mean, you've really got to do everything perfect if you want to try to get the water to go somewhere and not just lay on the concrete or build up and go back into the garage. As a matter of fact, that's one of the issues that this garage initially had, was water flowing into the garage, and that'll never happen again now with this particular setup. So when we get down to the driveway area, we're going to add some drains, go out through the curb face, slope it into the planter bed and catch some atrium drains and stuff. But there's your finished product. Went over it a few times by hand. Got a nice smooth trowel finish. This little front piece, we did a broom. You could see the fiber kind of roll up on it. That's a good sign, because then you know it's in there. Now we're going to saw cut. I mean, you could wet joint this and save you a day of labor going back out here and just wrap it up, joining it the same day. But in the garage, you want to saw cut if you can. That way, if you're, especially with this particular guy, Bob here, he's a real hands-on guy. You know, he rebuilds his own engines on his airplanes, and then he flies them, which is, you know, you got to be a pretty good mechanic to be able to do that and then get in them and fly around. So he's going to be in here rolling stuff around. And the saw cuts, you don't notice anything rolling when you cut. You roll over these saw cuts and not know they're there. And that's a Medusa hooked up to a cordless DeWalt vacuum. It's got the fleece filters in there, and it's got a couple HEPA filters in there as well. So at this point, there's no need for a mask, in other words. Now, to get in those nooks and crannies and against any vertical wall or anything vertical, you got to use that right angle grinder with a 4-inch blade. Then you can get in those tight fits. Now I'm just going to pressure wash it off. And I'm using the broom because I don't want the water to set in here, and because there is a little drywall that comes down right, that boxes in that water heater, so I'm going to get the water out of there quick as possible. That turned out real nice. And wait till you see the next part. It's a real beauty as well. Anyway, thank you for watching. Have a good day. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit the notification button. That way you'll be notified when part 2 comes out. Have a good one. Bye.